And welcome to Netflix and Kill. Yes.
Halloween version.
Still not out of Halloween yet. Not October yet. So we are going to be talking with Patience yet again. But who is in the Halloween spirit and making all the goofy, weird ghost noises? Well, it's me, Nick the Merc with a mic, and my fellow unapologist,
Travis. And
our guest unapologist,
Patience,
lovely to have you back on again. I knew we had to record with you twice in October. It's not in October if we don't get to talk horror movies with Patience.
It's my month.
Whole month dedicated to Patience.
Yeah, it's actually the month that I become relevant.
So, would you like to tell the people what movie we are talking about today, Patience?
We are going to be talking about Stephen King's 1922.
1922. A man's pride was a man's land. And so was his son. My wife. She wanted us to leave all this behind.
We could move.
Cities are for fools.
We divorce. We both know that's what you want. Life is rarely fair, especially out here.
And I believe that there's another man inside every man. A conniving man.
I'm gonna sell. You, my son, are coming with me.
This is our house. In 1922, I murdered my wife. Want a glass of lemonade, Sheriff?
Can I look in the house?
She only took the one suitcase.
Woman had to be crazy to leave a nice house like this one.
There is no God, because if there is no heaven, there is no hell.
It's a novella from his anthology series Full Dark, No Stars, I believe. And it stars Thomas Jane and his accent.
His accent is another character in this movie.
We'll get to his accent.
In fact, it's the main character of this movie.
We'll get to his accent.
We're going to talk about his accent. Anyway, it's a story about he's just a humble corn farmer who maybe is not so humble, and he decides that he's going to kill his wife.
That's the best thing that happens to him.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And then his life goes solidly downhill after that. Is the brief version.
Cause I see, there's a little person living in all of us, an evil midget, if you will, who just wants you to kill your wife.
A conniving midget.
Conniving little midget.
1922. And the title 1922 is...
You're not going to forget it.
Is referring to the year that this all takes place within a year, I suppose. Which...
Yeah... I think they allege that at the end, yeah.
Seems like a lot of events to take place within a year. Like this, so you gotta figure he has a year to convince himself to kill his wife, to convince his son to go along with it, to cover up the murder, to deal with some other complications that are down the line. So this is not the first Stephen King Netflix film. We actually reviewed the previous one, Gerald's Game. And I believe this is also... Was this at Fantastic Fest?
Yes, it was. It premiered at Fantastic Fest along with Gerald's Game. I think that Gerald's Game did slightly better in the reviews than this one did, probably because it's a big difference between Mike Flanagan and Zach, is it Hilditch?
Hilditch, yeah.
Although he did do These Final Hours, which I liked a lot. I liked that movie quite a bit. So this is like his sophomore effort, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And I can kind of feel that because this film, now it's interesting you say that it's a developed part of his anthology series, because that's definitely what I felt like when I was watching it, is that this feels like a short story, in part of an anthology series, an anthology horror series that
Probably something that had a similar theme. Yeah.
And I feel like this is definitely a short story that got stretched to an hour 40, I believe is the running time. There's
I think it was 142. Yeah.
Yeah, there's just a lot of dead time in this movie that is, I don't know, it doesn't feel like very tight, I think is the problem. Because there's actually a lot of good stuff here that is kind of muddled down. Let's start with the good stuff here. Actually like the atmosphere of the farm. I like how it's shot, how isolated and kind of
Alone. Yeah.
And how like kind of creepy a old barn house can be in the middle of the night. I like that. I like the when the wife finally comes back, who's played by Molly Parker, by the way. She comes back as this kind of queen of the rats thing. That is actually a really neat design for a horror movie kind of monster. I like the supernatural, like, is it psychological or supernatural elements that is kind of, taunting him and, his personification of guilt. But other than that, it's kind of like
That's basically 20 minutes of the movie, and then there's there's quite a bit more of the movie left.
Well, the rest of it's kind of like atmosphere and his tension with his son, tension with his son, and he gets in trouble with the neighbors. There's like other conflicts that are going on. I think one of my main things for this movie is just that the plot and reasoning for killing the wife is very
flimsy.
I wouldn't say flimsy. Like, there's a reason, but it's like the way they go about it is very elaborate. Like they're like, oh well, my wife has the deed to this land, and I want that land so I can keep it and give it to my son when he grows up. And I'm just listening to my own southern drawl. And so he does everything. He offers her, money to stay with it, and even offers, you can divorce me and just leave me and I'll buy the property off of you. It might take me 8 to 10 years or something, but she wants to sell it to this other like big farm conglomerate and something like that. And they're just having this big conflict, and she's getting to the point where she's like, I will make your life a living hell if you don't, sell the land and do this with me.
Yeah. She threatens to basically, sell the land and then take the son. And of course, like back in this day and age, sons are super important. He wants to keep both the land and his son.
Yeah. Well, he's like, what's the use of land if I have no one to pass it to?
Yeah.
And I get where he's coming from. This land is all he knows. It is his self-identity.
I think they really should have pushed it a little bit more that it was like a farm conglomerate that they were trying to sell to, like some kind of industrialized like slaughterhouse farm. Because that's what they showed in the end, and I was like, oh, that's what they're selling it to? That makes the whole movie make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that they were selling it to like a pig farmer or something, and / slaughterhouse, which was going to be dumping all of these like terrible things in their river or their creek, which was going to ruin. Yeah, it was. I mean, like there at the end, he talks about it a little bit more, but in the beginning, you're like, oh, okay.
Like it's just on him being spiteful. Like, I don't want these people having the land. Fuck them.
Yeah.
I think he actually didn't know that from how it played. I didn't think he knew that bad stuff was going to happen until the end. I think in the beginning it just played it off like it was just his pride fucking with him.
Yeah, it did seem like he did come across as very prideful in the beginning. I was like, man, this guy's a total cunt, like, wow.
Yeah,
what a jerk face.
I would describe most people who would kill their wives over that kind of thing a cunt. It's pretty,
well, you think about his options. You think about his options and you go like, where he's trying to convince the son too, and the son doesn't really want to go along with it, but he's sweet on the girl next door and doesn't want to leave, so he kind of ropes that into his conniving
manipulation. Because he straight up manipulates his son.
Well, and then you think like, well, why?
Yeah.
Like, you could easily probably kill her in some innocuous way and keep it from your son. Like, there's got to be easier ways to kill people.
Well, they could say, I don't know, make her walk over the well and waken that useless empty well and weaken some boards and make her fall down and break her neck.
Yeah, we'll get to my favorite kill, Travis. We'll get to my favorite kill of this Netflix and kill.
Best kill.
But we need to address the elephant accent in the room here.
Oh God,
Thomas Jane.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like Thomas Jane.
Yeah.
He is not the best of actors, but he has shown himself to be pretty adequate when it comes to getting across emotion and putting himself in a scene. This man cannot do accents.
We actually had to turn on subtitles.
We had to turn on subtitles at some point because this mush-mouth motherfucker would not move his goddamn lips enough to the point where he could enunciate and be understood. Like, he's trying to do his Sam Elliott impression, and it is just like, I'll say, boy, I say boy.
Nope, sorry, I can understand you.
It's like,
try harder.
and I'm like, I just wanted, like, I don't understand how everyone on the set was like, oh, jeez, okay, is everyone too awkward to tell him about his accent or what? Because it's not like they couldn't have known.
It's hard to tell.
Did they think this was a good... Patience, you live in Texas. Is this
I do.
How did the accent... How was this accent for you?
It was horrible. I mean, I think he was trying to go for like a Midwest, accent, which, I mean, I'm not super familiar with the Midwest accent. This takes place in Nebraska. Fun fact, it takes place in Hemingford Home, Nebraska, which is also the the home of Mother Abigail, who was one of the main characters in The Stand. So that's your trivia for tonight. But
Stephen King trivia.
Yeah. Stephen King trivia. And I don't, like, for me, it sounded like this weird combination. Like, I feel like he was trying... Did you guys see Taboo with Tom Hardy?
No, but I heard he also had a weird, like, kind of Cockney accent in that.
Yeah, like mush mouth, like grunty accent. And I feel like it was like a cross between that and then occasionally it sounded like Tom Hardy's Bane along with like Carl from Sling Blade. There was just like he really wanted his French fried potatoes or something. It was so bizarre, and I can't imagine someone.
Well, and yeah, so this movie is set in Nebraska. You'd think so. I don't know what an older, Midwestern accent would sound like. I know a current one would sound a little more like this. Just a little, maybe a little even nasally. Maybe not as Fargo-esque, but a little something nicer. And then, but he's trying to do this like. I'm pretty sure Arkansas or Alabama, like Southern accent that is not coming across. And I'll tell you what, he makes the mistake a lot of actors make when they come to doing accents is that they go at it way too fucking hard. Like and I'm like, dude, just put a light Southern drawl on, and I think you'll be all right. It just. I mean, it doesn't have
Bill Clinton impression.
You don't have to go full method on it, like, oh, this is what they would sound like, and they'd sound barely intelligible.
Some people call it a lawnmower blade. I like to call it a sling blade.
Sling blade.
So bad.
So I don't understand how that got past the snuff there, because literally it's like, okay, at the point where the audience can't understand what he's saying, you're authenticity, if that's what you were going for, is not working out to your favor.
Yeah, I mean, I've had to put on subtitles before for English-speaking people. That's usually in like a really heavy British accent, which like, hey, it's a different country. They have different, vernacular. They have a really heavy accent compared to like, difference than ours. So yeah, I might have to do that. This is supposed to be set in the same fucking country I live in. I shouldn't have had to put on subtitles like, alright, rewind, what was he saying there? Yeah, I still don't understand what he said. I'm reading it and I still don't know these words.
Well, and then you'll see Neil McDonough later, and Neil McDonough doesn't put on hardly an accent at all. And he does great. Like, he's just fine. So obviously it's not across the board. I don't know if it was an acting choice by Thomas Jane himself, or if the director really wanted the one character to come across. Like, not even the son's accent is as hard as his. I was just
about to say, yeah, nobody else has an accent. That just occurred to me right now.
Nobody else in the movie.
They have accents, but it's not his accent. It's definitely a southern drawl.
Like, they have a drawl, or they have some sort of accent. Like, if there's any point of this, I was just confused where this movie was, because everyone has, of course, a different type of accent. Because it's just like, we'll just do it felt like everyone was like, well, just do an accent. And
they're allowed to do whatever they wanted.
And Thomas Jane just like decided to be the craziest one out of all of them. I don't know.
It was a very bizarre choice. It really was.
Especially with all the narration in this movie. Like,
I do have to say, though, that the accent really, really bothered me, like, the first half of the movie. And I did have my subtitles on as well. And the last half of the movie, maybe I was just numb to it because it didn't bother me quite as much after a while. I just maybe got used to it. Stockholm Syndrome.
No, I got used to it as well, actually, and started to enjoy the accent because it was one of the more interesting things for me to focus on in the later part of the movie, where I was kind of like just waiting for stuff to happen. I was like, you should make a drinking game out of all the times he says 1922.
We all get caught. 1922.
It's like his teeth are always clenched whenever he's speaking. Like, your jaw can move, dude. But yeah, the accent is distracting. But what's even weirder is that even given this accent, they have him narrate almost constantly throughout the film, which is another trope I see a lot when books get adapted into movies, is that there's a lot of narration to make up for the character's first-person perspective that would come across in the book and not in the movie.
Which is what Gerald's Game did very well on.
Well, Gerald's Game gets around it with the whole imagining illusions and like hallucinations and stuff to talk to, and flashbacks and stuff. Like, they work their way around to try and avoid the narration as much as possible, and even they start to do it at the end.
At the end, yep.
And this one, it just kind of goes for it the whole entire way through, to the point where I'm like, man, I feel like some of these scenes, as well as they are shot, because there's some of them that are actually pretty well shot. Like, there's a cool, snowy sequences when it turns to winter. I feel like some of those actually might work better if I was just left with this guy staring off into the distance and kind of just going around his house, and not being let in on his every thought.
Right. And the movie does a really good job of showing like less and less characters over the course of the movie till you're basically left with just our main character.
I don't know, Patience, what did you think about the narration overall?
The narration, I don't think really bothered me other than the accent stuff. Yes, I read a lot, so I can get that part, but I can see how a lot of people would be like, yeah, you don't need to spell it out for me. I get what's going on. Like, it's a descent into madness. Like, he's hitting rock bottom, and you can tell that. And I did love the shots with the winter, and especially when he finally decides to go get his appendage looked at. Like,
yeah.
And you're just like, oh, now you're going to go to a doctor? But that whole shot where he's outside just like practically freezing to death is just like so pretty. There's a lot of really great director's choices with the cinematography here.
I would agree there, yeah.
Yeah, and I do like the, when the wife does show up to haunt him, there's some pretty neat sequences like the door opening and closing, and him seeing visions of her, and coming down to the basement and whispering into his ear. Like there's some pretty neat stuff going on there. I feel like also we talked about how elaborate his murder plan is as well. I feel like in 1922, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like if you want to just kill your wife in 1922, I feel like you don't have to go through all this trouble.
No, it was a lot of work. I don't think you'd have to do it now, to be honest. Like, it was such a convoluted plan.
Yeah, funny enough, he says, like back then, a man's wife was his man's business. And then he's like, well, one thing I learned about murdering my wife is it takes a lot of work.
Well, if you do it the way you did, yeah, it takes a lot of work.
I mean, like, you traumatized your kid, for one.
Well, I mean, they don't even bury her, like, because they do this whole thing of like, oh, we're gonna pretend that she left or whatever, and I'm like, why don't you just say she died of consumption or of the flu or I don't know, half a dozen other things in 1922, and then bury her in the back? I doubt anyone will even fucking check. Like, and then. So instead, they try and bury her in this well, and they have to go through this whole thing of the lawyer coming to her lawyer that she was going to use to sell the land comes out to see her, and he isn't allowed in to look around, and she's in the well at that point.
And by the way, this is an empty well, just a dry well.
Yeah, and then they like, oh well. We got to fill in this well, but it'll arouse suspicion. But unless there's some reason that it's got to be filled in, which leads to my favorite kill of this movie.
Best. We rewinded this 3 times, not even joking.
In which they put a board over the well, like they have and then one of the cows stands on over it, and they force it to stand over it, and it breaks, and the cow falls in. It is hilarious. This CG cow shot that they use while fast is not fast enough to show to escape how fake that fucking cow is.
It's so funny.
It's so funny.
It's such an awful story moment too, but it's so fucking
It's just so
funny.
hilarious. It's so funny.
It's like this guy who's seriously like, I can't afford $75, but I can afford to kill my cow. What?
I'm gonna kill my cow.
But even then, the reasoning is just like, oh, well, we had a cow fall into the dry well, so we decided to fill her up. And I'm like, why not get a stronger cover? Like, maybe the problem was that the wood you used was fucking ancient. Like, even the sheriff's like, that seems like a lot of work for a problem you can literally like cardboard over. Just use some poster, like just maybe don't use just tissue paper to cover the damn thing.
Well, the cow's gonna start smelling. So, gotta bury it, because otherwise, unless you're gonna use it.
Right. Well, then he gets confused later when, like, there's, like, rats coming through the plumbing or whatever.
Yeah, because when he first opens the well to basically check on his wife, he gets all disgusted with the fact that there's rats eating her. I'm like, yeah, you left you left meat lying around. That's what you did.
Well, and
what
then
were you expecting?
And then he gets surprised when the rats are like coming out of the drainage pipe or whatever, and it's like, oh, well, that drainage pipe only leads to one place. And I'm like, yes, wells lead someplace. I'm glad you remembered that. What
cracked me up about that part was like he catches the rat like chewing on one of his cows, and he throws up, and I'm like, oh, so you throw up over that, but not like when you
murdering
slit your wife's throat. Yeah.
Failing to slit your wife's throat.
Dude, she was asleep and drunk, and still you guys fucked up and didn't kill her clean. Like, that was ridiculous how long it took them to kill her. Although, I do get it, it's supposed to be this big traumatic sequence, especially for the son. But, yeah, I mean, I don't know, I guess I'm kind of just split in this movie, because it's not like I hated her or anything, but I'm not gonna lie that I was a little bit bored during some certain sections here. I don't know,
it definitely drags. Yeah, it definitely drags. I feel like there was a lot of scenes where just like, of him just like reading, just like, okay, another scene of him just reading his book, got it, And I grant there is some, narrating his laugh. There's a great ambiance to the movie, and I feel like a lot of that has to do with the score by the amazing Mike Patton from Faith No More. Like, I just was so excited when I found out that he was scoring this movie, and I feel like he did such a great job. The ambiance, but I mean, the cinematography is great too, but the ambiance from the score is like above and beyond. Maybe I'm a little biased though.
No, I do agree that the music was a great choice for this film.
But yeah, I can see it definitely dragged. I tried watching it last night and I was just like too inebriated to watch it because I was like, oh my God, I can't deal with this right now. You know, I just felt bad for the cow.
Poor cow. It had a name too.
Elvis.
Elvis was the name?
Yeah, it was Elvis with the PH. Again, subtitles, right?
Well, he does have a point where he has to kill another cow later, and I like to feel like the other cow was like, "Oh, you're gonna do me just like you did
Elvis."
Elvis, yeah, huh? I see how it is. Fuck you. Just shit talking.
The thing is, we both thought the same thing. Is that this cow was like, lying against the ground, just like, nah, I got the whiskey again. Just walk past me. It's fine. I'll just sleep it off.
He clearly cared more about the cows. He had more emotion killing the cows than he did killing his wife.
The cows gain him money, whereas the wife just seemed to lose him money.
Right. Is that what it's about?
Plus, the cows weren't such a cold fish in the sack.
Ew.
Mr.
Alley. But yeah, I like the son too. I actually recognize the son from another Netflix and Kill we did. I think our first one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Horns. He was he was the bad dude in Horns actually.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah, so it was interesting to see him here. I was like, why do I not trust your smarmy little baby face?
Smarmy little baby face.
Because that actor does have a baby face. I do get him. I do go why they seem to like. I'm pretty sure he's older than he looks, but
born in 99.
Oh, born in 99. Okay,
oh,
yeah.
God.
Then yeah, maybe he there's a reason he's baby face.
he's a baby.
Yeah. I want to try and avoid the spoiler section until a little bit later, but I do like the ending sequences where his story kind of goes. That's pretty interesting. Where his love life ends up.
Takes quite the turn.
Indeed it does. Let's see, what else? Travis, do you have anything else to mention before we go into our ratings and spoiler section and whatnot?
I kind of like the fact that the beginning of the movie has the father manipulating his son in order to let him help him kill the wife, and later on the kid who helped murder his mother basically literally says to him well, mom would have helped me out with this, bitch, you killed your mother. You don't get to pull that card anymore, for one. And then the husband just kind of looks at him just like, kid, did you forget the fact that your mother wouldn't give you enough money for shoes? And yet you expect her to pay for this? Nuh-uh. There's a reason we killed her.
I'll show you. I'm tell my... Oh, that's right.
Oh, wait. Goes talks to the well.
Yeah, I think my main problem with this movie is just that it is not the pacing of it is messed up. It doesn't feel like it's moving in a particularly good clip.
It moves about as slow as his drawl.
And the fact is that it's just not that. I don't want to say it's not that it's interesting. It's just there's not a lot of substance to this story. It's even just a period piece in merit alone. It's set in this time. It doesn't need to be set in this time. It just happens to be set in 1922. Yeah, I mean, it being set in 1922 basically gives it the reasoning for why he's so obsessed with his money and why the farmland is so important to him. That's the only way I can actually reason his motivation is how important legacy and, you know, passing on stuff to father to son. I don't know, like, I feel like there's just a disconnect for this. Like, there's just not enough for me to chew on, really. I mean, I like that. I like that I'm just a rat that doesn't have a corpse to chew on. But I like that the personification of his guilt is so in his face and kind of like it just torturing him. Very like Edgar Allan Poe. Like,
oh yeah, it is. It's definitely. Now I'm forgetting the name of the stupid.
The Raven.
No, not the Raven.
The Telltale Heart.
Yes,
the Telltale Heart. Yes. Okay. I was just like, Edgar Allan Poe story.
Don't randomly name one.
The Cask of Amontillado. I don't know.
Telltale Heart.
Pendulum.
Because it was basically
Telltale Heart.
longer version of a Telltale Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is.
And I feel like with,
with rats.
But with rats.
And I do feel like this would have worked better as a short film or a short story. As a short story, it would probably work better. Just because I think you need a little bit more to a narrative rather than, because there's complications that he runs into later, like, you know, his boy getting sweet on the neighbor girl and end up getting her pregnant actually, and Neil McDonough as the neighbor coming to him for like his share of the money to send her to a home to put the baby up for an adoption, and it's like, well, I don't have $75, and it's like, well, you know what I'm going to do if you don't have $75? Nothing, because I know you don't got it. I'm not going to hound you for it, but don't lie to me and say that you can't come up with the money. So I'm like, what kind of conflict is this?
Not much of one, to be honest.
It's a gentleman's conflict, I guess. Back then, it was like, oh, well, I know you don't have the money, but I guess you could come up with it if you really wanted to, but I'm not going to say anything.
If you don't give me this money, I will be seriously put off.
I challenge you to a duel. Oh, no, that's much earlier. Never mind.
I never feel the threat of people finding out that he killed his wife, because I just, on one level, I feel like the sheriff just does not give enough of a shit.
Well, we also see the beginning of the movie, him writing basically a note saying, I killed my wife, this is how I got away with it.
Mm-hmm. Also, I feel like, if anyone found out, this is 1922, I doubt they'd care.
Yeah.
Like, the farm he was trying to sell to might care, but like, I don't think people were going to be up in arms like, I cannot believe you killed your wife.
Oh, you know what's really funny? This movie totally has a side story where the neighbor also killed his wife.
Hmm. Did he kill his wife?
No, but you don't know that, because he just says like, my wife left me, and like the main character doesn't even question like, my wife also left me, I said.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for all we know, he killed his wife. You don't know
Right.
that, but no one cared enough to look into it.
Yeah.
That's one for feminism. Women's rights.
I did like that later too. It was just like, I hated Neil McDonough, not because he was coming over to threaten me, because of that damn Cadillac and his perfect stupid wife that always agrees with him and never argues with him about anything. It never really has any opinions. Goddamn perfect woman.
It's actually funny you mentioned the women's rights there, Patience, because in 1922, a challenge to the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution allowing women the right to vote is rebuffed by the Supreme Court of the United States. So there you go.
Oh.
There was some women's rights then.
So maybe that's what's significant about 1922 is that, Stephen King was writing a story about a woman who finally wanted to like get out from underneath her husband and actually, do something for herself rather than like, being at his mercy. She was like, screw you. I'm going to do what I want. And I have the money and the land to sell, to do it. And there's nothing you can do to stop me. Oh, wait.
Oh, whoops.
Yeah,
except for murder me.
It's like, I have leverage finally.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love it too how she's like, well, we're going to sell the land and move into the big city. And he's like, what will we do with all this money? And later on, he came and scrounged around $75. Like, well, you could have paid off a debt.
You buy things and invest in another business. There's so much you can do with money. Like,
It's a weird thing how that works.
And then when he finally does get some money, he ends up not being able to use it because of one of the things that ends up happening to him, and so he ends up like the money goes to waste basically.
well, as soon as
because
he
he
goes
can't
into
fix up his farm.
Well, as soon as he goes into the mortgage office and they sell him on this, like, look at all this improvements you can make to your barn and all this this money you can do. Like, don't you want the indoor plumbing like your neighbor? And you kind of realize, like, oh, the reason the neighbor has a bunch of nice stuff is because he totally got in debt with the bank and he's about to get fucked. And yeah, so like that, like as soon as that happens, you go like, oh, well, it looks like you are like for some reason he's got so much invested in this farm that is just like the farm is just more important, or his pride really is more important than anything else in his life, including his family
And his life.
Well, I think that's another reason why 1922 is sort of significant, is because that's sort of the time period in America where farming became obsolete, and we started like this whole industrial revolution type thing where everyone was going more into like mechanical industries and that kind of thing. And farming just became like, we don't need that anymore. Like we kind of need it, but we don't need it as much as we used to because we're
There doesn't have to be
importing
a farm
products.
on every block.
Exactly.
Like Star Wars
and
that
so
way.
I believe the whole farming industry took a huge hit like in the 20s. So I think that it was inevitable. Regardless of killing his wife, it was inevitable his downfall.
Right. Well, with that, I think we've kind of talked this one. Unless you want to talk in more of a southern drawl, I think we can bring this one to an end. So let's go into our final thoughts and ratings, and then we can go into a spoiler section after that. Who wants to start? I'll tell you what, I'll start.
Travis? Okay, Nick.
I ask everyone who wants to start, and then just take it at the end of it anyway. All right. So this film is by no means a terrible film. It has, it's actually pretty competently shot. The acting minus Thomas Jane's accent is actually, pretty up to snuff. I actually really like Neil McDonough. He's always a great character actor to see anywhere. He always brings life to even the smallest of roles. The sound design's pretty good. The score is really excellent. The actual creepy moments when they do happen are pretty effective. The practical effect work when they use it is actually pretty intense. The CGI when they use it is pretty wonky, which is not surprising. Considering that the budget was probably not super high on this movie. I don't know. That'd be interesting to check. I don't know. I feel like that this is a solid, like this would be a really, really cool fucking half an hour to 40-minute short film that got stretched to an hour 45 and lost a lot of its oomph in the stretch.
Almost like it had been part of some kind of movie anthology where you showed a bunch of short stories.
Man, I would actually like a Stephen King anthology movie that had this as a segment. This would be really cool, and like the pacing would just have been a little bit snappier. Like, and you mean
like Creep Show?
Okay, well maybe maybe I don't know what I want. But I don't know. For me, for Stephen King adaptations, I've seen way better, but I've also seen way worse. I mean, it's no Dreamcatcher. Like, but it's also no Maximum Overdrive, which...
Wait, was it the good one or the bad one?
Well, it needs to get... At a certain level, if you go far enough down, you hit rock bottom and you, like, bounce back up.
Okay.
And that's what Maximum Overdrive is. But yeah, that's pretty much my problem with it. So I'm going to give this one... I don't know, let's say... 2... weirdly CGI cows falling down a well out of 5. I feel like you don't have to go out of your way to see this, but if you pop it in, it is a Netflix movie. If you pop it in the background and just kind of maybe, I don't know, check your email or do some laundry and wait for the really creepy parts in between, I think you could have some fun with it.
That's if you can understand the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Subtitles.
Yeah, and definitely turn your subtitles on after a certain point. Travis, what do you think, bud?
Well, I've been sitting here actually this last couple of minutes of this trying to figure out why was 1922 so important? Like, what exactly was this movie named for where 1922 was so important? Mm-hmm. I think I found it.
You found it out?
Yes. The spirit of his wife, I think I found out why she came into power.
Why is that?
Because I was looking at deaths and births of 1922. You know who was born in 1922?
I don't know.
Betty White.
Betty White.
Betty White took vengeance on this woman with her spirit being born.
Just like the Avatar, spirit moves.
Okay. Anyway, so I really can't find anything other than Alexander Graham Bell died in 1922. Yeah. This movie it's not terrible. Like Nick said, it definitely has the ambiance going. It does feel very isolationist, where it does make you feel like, yeah, this guy's, I never for once thought that, like, I never thought it could possibly be supernatural with this one, which with Stephen King movies, you never know it could turn on a dime. But this one I was feeling like, no, you're just going crazy with guilt and isolation, because that's going to happen to a human being who is only around 1 or possibly 2 cows. But still, it was a drawl in more than one ways. It was just a slow movie, not much movement going on any sort of way. It was fine. Like, again, it wasn't a terrible movie by any point. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. It was still pretty good. It did have good cinematography. It did have good music. It was solid enough.
And Patience, I know that you guys in the Deliberations Doom did Stephen King movies just a little while back, so I'm actually really interested to see how this one ranks among, since you've seen quite a breadth of the Stephen King film oeuvre.
Yeah, recently we did a whole slew of Stephen King movies, it felt like, and then also we got to see, Gerald's Game and 1922 at Fantastic Fest, which was really awesome. It's definitely the year of the King, for sure.
He will reign.
Yeah, exactly. I actually, as far as a Stephen King adaptation, I feel like it's actually probably one of the better ones, because we get, frankly, a lot of shitty Stephen King films. I mean, there's a ton of terrible ones. Not Maximum Overdrive, of course. No, that's National Treasure.
That is above board. Yeah. That's above criticism. But we do have stuff like, what was this stupid werewolf one?
Oh, are you talking about Silver Bullet? That makes me sad. I loved Silver Bullet. You should rewatch it. It's terrible and hilarious.
Oh, okay. I was just like, that werewolf costume. It's so bad.
Oh no, it's terrible. But it has like Nick Nolte and Corey Haim in it. It's amazing. Oh no, not Nick Nolte. Shit.
You mean Gary Busey, right?
Oh man, I'm dying. Crazy guy. You know which one I'm talking about, right? Never mind. Okay, move.
I do not know.
I think that 1922 is not Gary Busey.
That's what Nick said.
It's not terrible. Gary Busey. It's not a terrible Stephen King adaptation, but it's not the best. I mean, I can name a Thomas Jane Stephen King movie that's way better, The Mist.
Oh, yeah.
Right off the bat. Like, The Mist, and it starring Thomas Jane without an accent, even though it's set in Maine. He didn't feel the need to do, like, a Maine accent. I agree with both of you. Like, it drags. I mean, it's a pretty movie. It has a great score. It has some really great scenes. But it's not, like you said, it's something that you can put on in the background and like cook a meal or do your laundry or clean your house, and just, something you can listen to, kind of, I guess, unless you need subtitles like we did. So I'm going to give it 6.5 cow udders out of 10.
Oh, I thought you were just going to go straight up Gary Busey's.
Gary Busey's.
That's our new rating scale. How many Gary Buseys would you give this film?
Well, I feel like at this point we just have
I
enough.
love that.
We could just start rating it based off Stephen King films he's been in. It's like, all right, is it Dreamcatcher? Is it 1922, or is it The Mist?
Man, it would be
Right?
like this is the middle of the Thomas Jane Stephen King movies.
Yeah, it's the middling one.
It's the middling
Absolutely.
one.
It's impressive in a way.
That's hilarious. That's
Man,
hilarious.
It's the whole Thomas Jane Stephen King scale. We've cracked the code among this.
Nothing else will break it. It'll just fit into that, into that role.
No, that's the spectrum. I'm like, okay, where does it fall on the spectrum? The Dreamcatcher to the Mist spectrum.
Well, this is solidly at 1922. I love it.
Solidly at 1922. It's like, oh, all right, I know where the baseline is.
I got it.
All right.
Guys.
Well, thank you so much, Patience. Would you like to tell the people, before we go into the spoiler section, would you like to tell the people where they can find you and your great Deliberations of Doom and stuff like that?
Always, you can find me at Deliberations of Doom on oneofus.net, and you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and now we have an Instagram. So there's no reason why you shouldn't be following us on any of the social medias. And we I know, please. And seriously, the Summers Brothers, they post all the time and they're hilarious. So they actually engage in hilarious conversations on our social media pages. So check it out for sure.
Awesome. And if you'd like to check out any of the previous episodes of Netflix and Kill or just the regular episodes of the UGO podcast, you can find all of our stuff on iTunes at UGO Podcast. And you can find all our social media stuff at UGO Podcast as well. That's the Twitter and Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. You can even email us at unapologeticgeekout@gmail.com. Let me know what, if you want, some other guests on, or if you want us, what movies we should suggest to our guests. Usually we let the guests decide, but I actually kind of pushed our next guest into deciding one for. It's like, this is out. Maybe you want to pick that one.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
But with that, we're going to go into a small musical break and be back with the spoiler section right after this.
You had plenty money, 1922. You let other women make a fool of you. Why don't you do right like some other men do? Get out of here, get me some money too.
And welcome to the spoiler section for 1922. Spoilers, it becomes 1923.
It does indeed.
Yes, time does indeed move forward in this universe. But, no, seriously, where should we start? I guess we should start with him losing his hand, right?
Yeah, that was pretty
Yeah,
good.
I think that was the pivotal point, I think, where he started to really go downhill.
Yeah, there was that point where I'm like, okay, is this character going to be able to walk himself back from his, downward spiral? And then, once he loses his hand, I'm like, nah, that's probably about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he gets bit by a rat, like we said before, just decides, I'm just going to cover it in gauze, it'll be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Because, 1922.
And he, he just doesn't get that checked on for the longest time.
And his house just starts breaking down around him.
He's got a cow fucking living with him. And I assume he's sleeping with it. I don't know. For warmth, if nothing else.
If nothing else, indeed.
But yeah, that was pretty dark. It led to our Queen of the Rats, whispering in his ear about his son who ran off to go find his love, the next door neighbor girl. And they go off on a bank robbing, outlaw lifestyle. And they call the Sweetheart Bandits, I
Yes,
believe.
that was it.
Is that correct? Yes.
Something like that.
The Sweetheart Bandits. Oh, lovable, adorable name for bandits. So that was pretty neat, because I did like that the son was always like, I know the difference between right and wrong, Dad. You think I don't because I'm just a kid, but I do. You think I'll change my mind? So he's starting to talk about how mature he is, and then he does some stupid bullshit like this.
He's supposed to be like 14, isn't he?
Yeah. Well, he's obviously way older than he's supposed to be, but I'm not sure what was going through his thought process of like, I need to steal money. Like, I get the first time he does it because he needs the money immediately. But afterwards, it's like, you could get work doing something else.
Yeah.
Like, almost anything else.
You're a 14-year-old boy, and pre-industrial revolution.
Yeah, there's a job for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, Patience, what do you think of the sweetheart storyline?
I was just thinking about, okay, so when I was like 14, 15 years old and you have your first girlfriend or your first boyfriend and you just are like so fierce and like, we're going to be together forever. And, you just like have this romantic notion of what love really is. And you're just, obviously as we grow older, we're like, yeah, whatever,
love,
do the dishes, bitch. Yeah, it's definitely puppy love. But, so that's kind of what's going on with him. Like, he knocks up his girlfriend. And one of the reasons why Thomas Jane's character was able to manipulate him into killing his mother in the first place was using his girlfriend as a pawn. Because the mom was sort of outspoken and very sort of brash about the whole relationship thing. So he was already like, you could already tell, oh, you're willing to kill your mom over comments that she said about your girlfriend. You probably should have known that sending her away was probably not a good idea.
Yeah.
Like, he's obviously going to freak out. And he does. And so they become like this Bonnie and Clyde type relationship where they're just going to, like, I don't know, burn out, or, they're going to go down in some sort of fiery glory at some point. And
Spoiler, they do.
Yeah, so yeah, she gets shot and dies in his arms.
In the baby belly.
Yeah, so that sucks. Again, because this all takes place within a year. So, like, that's why I'm like, oh, it felt like more time was passing for me. Like, I felt like every time he said in 1922, and I'm like, it's still 1922?
No, just a year in real life passes the same time as a year there, it feels like.
Like, are they on a different planet where the Earth rotates slower?
Could be.
What's going on here? But yeah, so that's...
And it's really...
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was just going to say, and as like, Neil McDonough's character says near the end, he's like, at the beginning of the year, we started out with wives, and now it's the end of the year, and neither of us have wives, and we both have dead children,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, Neil McDonough does come back later in a great scene where it's like, I'd like to sell you that land now. Like, really? Really? You want to sell me that land now, do you? Let me think about that. Go fuck yourself. Yeah, so that doesn't work out great for him. He gets the body of his son back, and of course the rats got to it as well. Like, these rats, they're tenacious.
Oh, they are after him.
Yeah, I do like the scene when he first picks up the son. Because there's like a small little moment where like there's some press there asking him like, sir, can we ask you some questions? Because of course they are famous. His son was a famous bank robber now. So right. I'm like, oh, that's a nice little detail that probably would have happened like right at the at the tail end of the trip there. That makes sense to me. I like that he's like, like get a coffin, and the fine nicest coffin that my wife never got.
Made of sarsaparilla.
And then there's that one part where he's in the hospital recovering from getting his hand cut off because, and the cop comes and he's like, oh, we found this woman's body in the ditch. Did this happen? Did this happen? Is that what, is that your wife? And he just doesn't say anything. And so he totally gets away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I said, that's what we've been saying the whole entire time. Like, I don't feel like it'd be that big of a deal.
The movie proved our earlier criticism of it. Like when me and Travis were talking about it, and then this scene pops up where it's like where the sheriff totally leads them on like a, oh yeah, so we found someone with two back teeth missing. Was your wife had two back teeth missing, right? Yeah, maybe she got pulled over by a drifter when she was leaving you and got killed and dragged back to your well to be buried in there.
Yep.
And just like,
But them's women.
and I'm like, oh, come on, really? Like, I especially love the look Thomas Jane gives too, because like, really, dude? I could have just gotten away with it this fucking easily.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I didn't have to kill my cow or do that stupid CG shot. Like, I didn't do any of that.
Oh, thank God, the CG shot.
So yeah, that was, for me, that was pretty funny. Although it undercuts the tension of like, it would be more ironic if I felt like, if I hadn't felt like that from the beginning of the movie. I'm like, yeah, I don't think you need to put this much work in, dude.
Mm-mm.
So the point that where it doesn't really come as a shock more than just like, well, yeah, you didn't really think that one through, did you? So he ends up selling his farm, and because the bank, he owes money to the bank, right?
Yeah, and he sells it to the bank, which sold it to the farm.
Which sold it to the farm he wasn't trying to sell it to. That's right.
The pigs.
Yeah, and he ends up getting a job dragging pallets or doing whatever a one-handed guy can do in the 20s. Drinks himself into a stupor. Gets himself to where the movie begins, where he's writing that letter of like admittance of how he killed his wife.
Mm-hmm. And then the rats come for him.
And then the rats finally come for him, and he sees, at the very end, he sees visions of his wife, his son's lover, goading him into using the knife to come join us, they say. And the movie kind of fades out on that. To where we can only assume he either
he offed himself. Like it doesn't show it, but he offs himself.
Sure. Well, I mean, they leave it off on a where you don't know, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess it's either he kills himself or he
dies,
or he the other way to go with it would be to rally and say fuck you ghosts and learn to live with his guilt or whatnot. Like, no, that would be the other way it ends. But
he's a guy in the later stages of his life, I'm assuming in 1922, with no hand and no farm, no money left, and working basically pre-industrial, still industrial jobs.
Yeah, so that ending doesn't make any sense. So I like that they left it open for interpretation, but there's only one real interpretation you can really draw that makes any sort of sense. But I feel like they didn't want to end the movie on someone killing themselves. Like, maybe that they felt like that was just too dark of an image to leave it on. So they left it ambiguous. I don't know, Patience. What do you think about that ending?
One of the things that I think that they should have included, of all of the things that they put into this movie and the way it dragged, one of the things that I think that it was definitely missing was at the end of the book, the cops show up at his hotel room because obviously he has committed suicide, and all of that stuff that he wrote down, his confession, is in shreds because the rats destroyed it.
Nice.
That was the way the novella ended, and I feel like that was something that, I mean, like, we didn't need 3 more scenes of him reading his book. Like, they could have showed that scene and just that would have had like a great impact on the ending rather than just cutting out to, a black screen.
That's some dark, fucked up shit. Yeah,
it is. But that's kind of the whole point of this movie.
See, I did not know that, and I actually kind of like that ending too.
Yeah.
Well, it's not like this is a fucking uplifting movie anyway. Like it's only going in one direction.
Basically, all the characters we know about die. I mean, except for the neighbor, who probably also lost himself.
Yeah, I have a feeling that he did. But I mean, just think about it. So the last thing that he does, the one good thing he does, is confess, and the rats eat all of the papers, and it's ineligible. You know what I mean? It's just like
they ruin his last good, his last good deed
because they ruin everything.
Yeah,
exactly. So much better ending.
Yeah, I like that. Now I feel like before I had my suspicions that they might have pussed out at the ending, and now I'm like, oh yeah, they totally pussed out.
Mm-hmm.
For whatever reason, they didn't want to show someone taking their own life, probably. And, it is a disturbing image, and it's not something to be done lightly, but I feel like for this movie, it would have been super appropriate. So I really wish they would have gone there.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, I think that pretty much covers it for the spoiler section, right, guys?
Yeah.
We're pretty much, we got everything. Thanks again for joining us, Patience.
Thank you so much for having me. As always, I love recording with you guys. It's always an adventure, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we love recording these spooktacular reviews with you as well.
But sorry, after this, you're done for the year. You got your month. Now you're done.
Oh, okay, fine. No Christmas?
In the year of 2017, Patience was No, we'll definitely have you back on, Patience. Before 2018 even. We'll get you in, all right?
In 2022, Patience finally came back.
I can't wait to see what you pick for Christmas. There's just got to be a Stephen King movie about with Christmas or winter time or something, right?
I'll find one.
Dreamcatcher had snow. Dreamcatcher had snow.
Well, so does this movie.
Actually, The Shining has a lot of snow too.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But anyway, join us next time for another Netflix and kill. And until then, we are Unapologetic Geek Out, and we're out.